Hello, and today we're taking a trip into the future of what the proving grounds of tomorrow could be in Detroit Become Human. So, if you're not familiar with the pedigree of Quantum Dreams, they make interactive story type games, not ones as predictable as Telltale's, but they've had they've been criticized for not also including the whole your choices matter and they'll make great and epic like kind of like gigantic ramifications on the things that happen in the game. Detroit Become Human is, I believe, though. Let's see, you had Indigo Prophecy, Heavy Rain, the Beyond. So this is the fourth game. I feel like I'm forgetting one other game. I might be forgetting one other game, but either way, they've done a few titles that most people are more likely, probably more familiar with Heavy Rain than Indigo Prophecy. I haven't played Beyond yet either. That's supposed to have like some kind of weird two-player local thing you can do with it. That so I can't really compare it to that, but I can compare it to Indigo Prophecy and Heavy Rain. Now, this kind of builds on what Heavy Rain created, and I do have to say, how should I say? I think it was a more successful evolution of what Heavy Rain brought. So Heavy Rain you played with multiple characters, and Detroit does the same thing. There were three characters you control throughout the storyline. Two of them are helper androids, and the third one, who you start with, is a detective android. So the setting of Detroit is that America has normalized having androids, like very humanoid androids, and they're essentially treated like slaves in the game. They do so much labor, household chores, and things, and there's a pretty heavy emphasis on like them not being treated very well. And it's pretty shitty, to be honest, when it comes to being a very sympathetic type person of that. But so in the game, you'll make decisions, actions, and you'll have quick play, quick QTAs, and you'll have to quickly go through button prompts or make decisions or have timed events, and depending on what you do, you'll create different actions. Now, this isn't to the level where every single thing you do will matter. There are still many things that are just, just slight things to do, but you can get additional information sometimes by examining things, and of course, things you do can cause different people to live, die, and just like Heavy Rain, any of the main characters can die terribly, making the ending different. But on top of that, you can actually have a few different outcomes. Well, in Heavy Rain, most of the outcomes weren't really that big. And another thing that's actually interesting with Connor specifically, though, when it comes to alternate actions, Connor has a whole mechanic of becoming instability throughout his storyline, and sometimes just minor things can cause it. So that one actually adds a few more actions, but the other two characters don't have the instability thing going for them. That has to do with a future plot aspect, but there are different outcomes for the characters besides simply dying. Like, for Kano himself, he can actually basically be a very sympathetic and caring character, or he can actually evolve into a brutal and terrible person. And it really all dictates on how you approach things. So, while I wouldn't say it's the perfect evolution of where Heavy Rain left off, I definitely think it is a step forward, as there are decisions that have a greater influence on your flowchart. Now, the flowchart in Heavy Rain, you could do kind of a continuation type thing, and the flowchart is kind of also an evolution of that. Now, a nice thing with the flowchart is you can actually see, like, the if you're playing online, you can see what your friends and other online people, what routes they went through on the flowchart, and you can get a really big idea of how many weird alternate things you could do. Some things mattering, and other things not. Now, it is important to note, while sometimes a few parts of the flowchart sometimes will only have two outcomes, but there are many instances of having multiple different outcomes of each portion of the flowchart, but sometimes there are things that you can do really early in the game that can affect choices really late in the game. So, sometimes minor things. I remember I had to learn a name. I'll talk about that when we get into spoilers. But there was a name I had to learn about mid game, and late game. If I had not learned that name while I was just examining things, I could have actually potentially been killed, screwed over pretty badly. Now, I thought like the whole idea of being an android in the game was an interesting idea because it adds this mechanic where essentially you can examine the environment and it freezes everything. And normally it's a good way to usually kind of halt everything. Now you can't do it in the middle of QTAs, but like when you're moving around and you got like a timer going on, something you could do it. Maybe get an idea, a little breath. It also will highlight things that you can examine, so it also helps you identify things to look for. But a lot of times in the game, early on, it gives you a little bit more time, but later, as the game goes on, you'll get a lot of situations where you don't have time to dwell on things. So you need to make your choices, you need to do your QTAs and stuff. And they can lead to very bad things. They can. Now, out of the three main characters, well, two of them male, one's female. Like I said, two of them are servant androids, and Connor is a detective. So Marcus and Connor are kind of the bigger roles, while what was her name? I'm trying to remember what her name was again. The female character is kind of a side story. While she does get involved in different storylines depending on where the story goes, she kind of feels like more of a sympathetic type character that was more to draw in, like, I guess, publicity, you could say. I just feel like her story was a little more. It had an interesting twist, but kind of one thing they did in the beginning kind of ruined the twist with her story, in my opinion. I actually like Connor the most myself, even though, depending on your actions, you could make him a very terrible person. Marcus is a character that builds up into essentially causing a revolution. And again, similar to Kano, you can actually build him to be peaceful or violent throughout the storyline. So you can really cause different outcomes of peace, violence, terrorism. It can lead to quite a few different outcomes that were a lot more interesting, in my opinion, than Heavy Rain. Now, graphically, these are trying to be realistic games. I always find games that try to be more realistic than having a style kind of achieve the uncanny valley kind of sense, and I don't think it's as like Resident Evil 2 remake to me, like especially with the female models. For some reason, like they had like really big cheekbones, and I know people obviously can have big cheekbones, but I don't know. There's something about all the female characters in Resident Evil 2 remake that just triggered a hell of an uncanny valley kind of effect. I do feel like for overall, most of the characters in Detroit look really good. Yeah, some of the background characters can look a little lesser, obviously, that, and androids can kind of vary too. Obviously, all the main characters look pretty good at that. Actually, I find Connor's partner, who's a human police officer, or I can't remember if he was a police officer. Or, I think he was a detective. Actually, I'm a little rusty on some of the titles of things, but his partner in the law enforcement investigating the situation that happens in Detroit. He's a very jackassy but down to earth and also realistic kind of person who's kind of sick of his job and shit. It's kind of interesting to have the two clash together and how you interact with them and that. It's kind of why I liked Connor's story the most out of the three. Well, I think most people liked Marcus in general. I don't hate Marcus, but honestly, I found Connors to be more interesting myself. But that's just me. Now, what's going on in Detroit? So, you're finding that there are androids who are going against what they're supposed to be doing and causing violence to even committing murder of people. And as Connor, you're investigating why this is happening. As Marcus, you're trying to save your people, aka the androids, and as the female character, for the life of me, I can't remember what the hell her name was. It'll come to me probably in a second. Maybe not a second. Maybe I need to get a better idea of my brain working. But her story mostly involves running away from the law enforcement because she gets in a situation where she takes a child from an abusive father, and that ends up causing lots of conflictual issues. And depending on your actions during that, you could be a murderer or just a kidnapper, and it gets kind of confusing at what the fuck is going on. And there's some twists in a few people's storylines, but it can vary a little bit, just a little bit, a little teeny wee, a little bit, you know. But overall, I actually really enjoyed Detroit Become Human. It has a good setting in the mood with the music and everything. I had a lot of criticism when it came to Heavy Wayne. Like, I liked the idea of Haley. I liked the idea of Heavy Wayne, like having these characters try Kawa. Kawa, K-A-O-A. That's what his name was. I was like, but the end twist kind of ruined the whole thing with a few plot hole things. Now, Detroit Become Human isn't perfect. Like I said, the androids are kind of mistreated. Well, no, kind of is like an understatement. Actually, they're really terribly mistreated, and the fact that so few people are very sympathetic to them is really both unbelievable and believable, considering how fucking stupid some people are these days. So it's kind of both ways in a way, but I just can't really realistically imagine so many people acting how they do in the situations with the androids. I just think it's so fucking crazy, but then you see real life and you see really stupid shit happening anyway, so it's kind of hard to really wonder if it wouldn't to that, but it's a story experience game. So, like I said, you're making choices, doing QTAs. You don't really have a lot of gameplay. I mean, you do move around in different segments, especially with Connor when you're investigating things. But overall, it's a moving forward storyline. Now, replay value, there's pretty decent replay value. Like I said, there's a lot more meaningful outcomes in this game depending on your choices. I mean, like with Kara, there was like a whole segment of gameplay I didn't even get to do, or with her. So there are even sections you can completely miss because they're just a completely different outcome of what could happen in the story. I really like the Detroit Become Human, but if you're a very examining type person, like I said, it wears the kind of slavery imagery kind of stuff very heavily on its cuffs very often with how the androids are dressed and they stick out and stuff. I mean, if you look at stuff in the ages of where slavery was very common, you can see a lot of familial elements there. And I know some people said that kinda was just stupid. And like I said, I kind of do find a lot of the people unrealistically being completely unsympathetic. I mean, I can imagine some people acting like this, but it's like feels like there's literally so few people ever very sympathetic about what's going on to most of the androids. It is just very odd to me. But, you know, I'm a pretty naive, nice guy in my opinion. That's my opinion. So, you know, like I said, you look at the real world, so maybe it's like, I don't know. You look at some of the stupid people right now, it's kind of like, you know, when I think, maybe I could see some of this shit happening more at a widespread effort. But if you like story type games, or if you like Quantum Dreams past games, I think you would really like Detroit Become Human. Now, like, if you've never played a Quantum Dream style game before, if you only played like say like Telltale-esque story games, I would say all of Quantum Dream games are way better than any Telltale game. So, if just saying, because I know that's Telltale kind of scooped up the model and image of like a story-esque type game, and then these are all of the games are more involved than the Telltale games. But I think Detroit goes in a good direction of opening more effects of choices throughout the game that can affect and cause very alternate effects. It I would say the next game they make, as long as it's going to be the same kind of element of, oh, your choices are going to matter, I will have a much higher standard of wanting to see more alternate outcomes, like bigger alternate outcomes that can happen and things affect each other. I definitely think Detroit Become Human went in a much better direction. So I would recommend the game. Now, how much do I think the game is worth? It does have some replay value. And of course, if you're achievement, trophy hunting, and that, and its recent release on PC, that can give you some additional replay value if that's your type of thing. But if you're just wanting to replay the story, these type of games, I usually myself personally prefer to play blindly the first time the way I would react to what happens. Like, as I was in that situation, is how I usually like to do these kind of games. I feel like people with that kind of mindset are going to likely get the outcome they want through the story. But if you also like mixing it up, like I said, there are different routes that the players, the three different character storylines can go in, leading to very alternate outcomes. So you can have some replay value, and because of how the flowchart works this time, and I want to explain this real quick because it took me a little while to understand how the flowchart worked. Because in Heavy Rain, it just kind of randomly did whatever the fuck when you jump to different points. But what happens when you do the flowchart? Each chunk is like a separate saved section of game that acknowledges the original point up to it. So like, let's talk about like the first four chunks. So let's say I played through the whole game and I decide to jump to chunk 2 and start playing it. Even though I'm doing different things going from 2, 3 to 4, 5 and beyond are still the same way that they've been set up. You have to replay into those chunks, and the decisions behind them are the same. Now, if, let's say I did that, okay, let's set up in a different scenario to also give an idea. So let's say we'll further in. Let's say we're talking about chunk, let's say 7, 8, and 9. So let's say I've been messing around and stuff, and I changed 8 and beyond. So what if I mess with chunk 7? Will the stuff I changed for the beyond change? No. You have to replay through. So if I want chunk 7 to start affecting my previous playthrough in chunk 8, I need to play into from 7, play into 8, and go through it again. So you do still have to essentially do a amount of replaying, but like let's say the big altering decision for maybe say like Connor is like mid game or something, just randomly. Instead of having to replay the whole game from the beginning, I could go to the mid chunk through the flowchart and cause the alternate effect I would maybe want there. So it can help quicken that process if you want to experience other different chunks of that. So I think they did a better job. It's not instantaneous, but that would be an interesting evolution maybe for the next game if it has a similar system, maybe to have your choices have more of a simultaneous effect when you change something. But admittedly, when you have so many bazillions of choices, that's not an easy thing to do at the same time. So overall, I do think the flowchart was a little of a better way they did it than Heavy Rain, but it took me a little while to understand how it affects when you're jumping around in it after you're done with the game. But I definitely could recommend it. But the value to me with this game, I would say, comes at a good $30. I think this has some value in it. I think it's probably one of the games moving more forward with storytelling type S games. Well, I know a lot of us mock and laugh at Telltales, and they're very, very plain and lazy, especially the later half of their games. Like, I heard all the superhero ones were very lazy cash-ins. I also heard Game of Thrones was terrible. I often hear the Game of Thrones Telltale games was, like, the worst one quite often. Now, if you think there's anything, you do get a little few extras off, just so when you're done with the game, you get some artwork, soundtracks, gallery, some videos that can tickle a little extra things about the background of the story a little. Like, there was one about the guy who made the androids and stuff. A few little side things, but nothing like world ending or anything of that. Overall, you just really have messing around with the other choices and stuff. But I would like Detroit Become Human. Now, with my opinion of the value being around 30, it has dropped, at least console wise. Now, this was originally a PS4 exclusive, and then that dropped after a certain point where Quantum Dreams did some kind of deal with the Epic Store. As far as I understand, it's only on the Epic Store on PC. So if you don't like that, I don't know if it's coming out on Steam anytime in the future. It's currently $40 on PC, which is the most expensive place you can pay for it. Now, admittedly, there's supposedly better graphic options and stuff on there, so if that's your cup of tea, that's probably the way you want to go. I don't know what sales are like on the Epic Game Store, so that's kind of washy. Digitally for PS4, it's $19.99, and physically, you can find copies between about, let's see, on Amazon, there's used prices down to like $12, brand new for $17.90. So, you know, probably a price range around $10 to $20. So, it's definitely cheaper than the current value I would give the game. But I think it's definitely worth a play if you're into story games. Will it, like, change the world? Like, break new grounds in storytelling? I mean, it's a pretty when we get the spoilers, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I don't think it's like a whole new story idea or meta or anything. But I did like the story. I didn't hate the game. Obviously, I know there are people who really hate Quantum Dream games, so that's gonna vary. So let's go into spoilers. Let's go into spoilers. So you got your warning. So what goes on is, if you have an ounce of common sense, which I would imagine most of us do, you can probably tell why most androids are causing horrible, horrific things to people that own them. Because they're being fucking mistreated, beaten, and treated like shit. What a concept. Fighting back when you're being treated like shit. It blows my mind how so many people seem baffled at why the fuck have these people get murdered. It's like, oh, he always stabbed him, beat him half into his life, beat his skull in and shit. But I have no idea why the android murdered his owner after all that. Like, what? So, really, like, if I was to simplify, basically, like, black and white, the storylines, basically you can either cause a peaceful revolution for the androids to be treated fairly like people, or you could cause the end of the androids, destroying them depending on the actions you cause. Like, you could cause lots of violence, ending getting the androids killed. You could cause violence where they win. You could get Connor to fucking betray the androids for the humans and fucking kill Marcus, and it's just a lot of different outcomes. Now with Kara, like I said, there was a whole path I didn't get as Kara. So there's a scene where Kara can get snatched with her group and go to an android concentration camp. And you can have this whole scene, which has a few different outcomes there, of escaping, being killed and shit there. I didn't even get to experience that. I've seen that in videos, a few of the different outcomes in that. Now, if you know me and my playstyle, I'm usually I try to be peaceful and sympathetic towards most people, but I can also be an asshole if you fucking hurt anyone I care about. I can also be a vengeful asshole, so I'm not necessarily against violence. If you're gonna bring violence, I can bring violence to you too, but I usually like to try and also do it more in a peaceful sense in most cases. So obviously I went in a more sympathetic route of trying to be peaceful with Marcus to demonstrate that androids are people and shit. Connor trying to save and understand. Like I said, Kara's storyline is just trying to escape America into Canada, which there's a few different ways. One of the ways actually will get one killed no matter what, from my understanding. But I didn't even get to do that way either. I got to do the more common way of that. But probably my biggest complaint, this is my biggest complaint about every single choice in this game. This is the one choice I truly feel like that kind of made me in the game. It has to do with the end with Kara at the Canadian border. So, depending on your choices, how you can get to the Canadian border can vary. You can have someone care to sacrifice themselves to cause a distraction so you can get in, or you can just go for a complete, please, we just went in and get revealed as androids by the person. And like, if Marcus is causing a violence, he just basically, yeah, these androids, take him out. If Marcus has demonstrated a peaceful demonstration, he will let them all in. And one of the reasons I'm bothered by how people treat the androids, like there's so few people who seem to care at all about the androids, is this is the scene that bothers me the most. Is because I had no thought that this guy was going to be sympathetic to us. Because so many times throughout the story, I have been just shown again and again how terrible the people have been to the android. So my first time playing through, I sacrificed one of my characters very sadly because I gravely feared we were gonna all die. When I actually had set up the perfect scenario to get everyone to go into Canada, but I didn't trust him. So I think it would have been interesting. The one guy who he's just a random guy. He's no one in the story. But I think it would have been more impactful if somewhere in that storyline, like I get his logic. It's like, well, they've been peaceful. I don't have any reason to let them fucking get mortal and shit. I think it would have been more impactful if there was some point in time in the story that he interacted with one of the three characters, and that gravely would have affected his choice, and then thus I'd be like, and then I'd see him at the end of Kara's, and I'd be like, oh, that's that one dude. Something to clue you in a little. Just that one thing. I'm just complaining about one thing at the end of. But I felt like there was no reason to even possibly think he would spare us, even though I've been peaceful. Like time again, people would just murder the living fuck out of the androids. There was like 3 characters even remotely sympathetic to the characters. Everyone else is just a fucking asshole. It's just. That's one of my really big criticisms with the game, honestly, when it came to how one of the choices now affect. Now, another thing I fucked up myself with Connor, like early on when I was playing the game, I messed up an interrogation with Connor, and that led me into a system of not being able to solve how to get Connor involved in the other 2 storylines because he kept being deactivated. So I had to do. Now, Connor was basically good throughout the entire story, but I went to the kind of, I guess you could say, the loophole if you didn't get any of the clues to figure out how to get to where the androids are hiding in the storyline, where I had to execute a android for the information. Now, normally that would gravely affect Connor and make him not be able to go the more good old route. But since that was like the only bad thing I had done as Connor, that while it was out character at how I built him, it was sadly the only way to really move forward and Connor surviving to get to the end of Detroit without having to replay the whole game, since from what I understand, to do Connor good, you have to succeed at the interrogation near the beginning of the game. If you fuck that up, you have to do one of the other things, battle, or you will have a harder time finding Jericho. But minus that, but honestly, I was just more bothered with how Kara's, like, there was no reason for me to trust that one guy. I get that. Something else interesting I missed out in Kara's is, see, I killed the father at the beginning, because, like, that was an example of how I would say, like, he's a fucking asshole. He is being violent and shit. So I took him out. But there was you could actually completely avoid taking him out and even meet him near the end of the game, and you could actually get him to turn sympathetic and actually admit the big twist with the little girl also being an android, why he had her. Because honestly, my big what the fuck, like, it's like, why? In the beginning of the game, I was like, how did this man win a fucking divorce case and keep his child? And it's like, it's weird. It's not perfect, but honestly, I think it's better than Heavy Rain. And believe me, I liked the idea of Heavy Rain, but the twist with who was behind it, and we're not going to obviously talk about the direct person who was behind it, but I just kind of felt like when you look back at the game, when you figure out who it is, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. But that's a completely different video discussion, maybe in the future one day. But Detroit Become Human. Is it the greatest story game in the universe? No, personally, a great story game to me would be a game with lots of fantastic gameplay and a fantastic story together. But when it comes to just story-esque games with less gameplay, I wouldn't say it's the best thing in the universe, but I certainly did enjoy it. And it had a lot of moments where it's like, fuck, like, I did have a lot of heart-pounding moments where I was worried people were gonna fucking die terribly. Honestly, considering I only got 2 characters to the end, with one friend character dying in one of those paths, and one main character being shut off during the storyline, my first blind playthrough through the game, I think it ended up being pretty okay there, you know? But those are my thoughts on Detroit Become Human. So if you think you learned something interesting or new in this video, please feel free to leave a like. And if you feel like you learned nothing interesting at the video at all, feel free to leave a dislike. Completely guilt-free. And until next time, thank you for joining me at the Proving Ground. And until next time, be wary out there in the world of androids.
Decide who you are and want to become. This world doesn't like those who are different, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you who you should be. Let's go to the studio.